Hey, Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box Podcast. My name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And welcome to episode 404.
Yeah!
Hey, you lot, I hope you've had a cracking week and that you've all managed to do something Doctor Who. I'm going to let him win. Related. There we go.
With our internet issues this morning, I've no idea if I won that. Yeah. We've got major dropouts and listeners and major delays, and the cyber mats are well and truly in my computer this morning.
Oh, dude, it's the.
But we're here.
It's the bane of my life, mate. I'll be completely honest with you. I was recording the Roundtable episode last night, the July Roundtable with the writing team. And, yeah, same thing. Everyone's dropping out. Internet's cutting out. Delays, out of sync, the whole lot, mate.
Oh, fun and games.
So thank you, all of my co-hosts, for making my life easy, simple, plain. Appreciate that.
I couldn't be any closer to the internet box, mate, unless I was sat on it. Unless I actually go and sit on the router, I couldn't be any closer to it. I don't know why it's so bad today.
Oh well, it's the nature of the beast, and not the beast from the beast below, but the beast that is the internet in the UK, I guess. Yes, welcome to episode 404. Oh, you lovely lot! I hope you've had a cracking week. That you've managed to do something Who related, as we said. There's very little news kicking around, as seems to be the case. It seems like we had the huge build-up, as expected, in the run-up to season 1, and then a couple of little tidbits as that was rolling along, and then when that was finished, a couple of weeks ago, it's been pretty dead, mate. I think there's been a couple of little, as usual, there's been a couple of little bits from Russell. I saw an interview on, I think it was Wales Online, the website, and he was being asked about Mrs. Flood, and had said that we may never know the answer to who she is and why she broke the fourth wall and that stuff. So that's something to look forward to. Yeah, he basically said in the writing room, and when they're going through all of that, he said that everybody who's involved in writing and making the show knows exactly who Mrs. Flood is and the purpose of why that's there. But in terms of one day explaining it to the viewer, he said we might never get to that. It might just be a whimsical little nugget of mystery. So that's...
Oh, dude. I mean, like, it's one thing not to explain everything, but that's quite a big one. I hope he's teasing. I hope he's lying.
I would assume. It's a tease.
A bit like he was about Susan Twist.
Yeah. It's a bit of a big tease, though, right? Because I imagine, like your reaction just then, probably a lot of Who fans were like, "Come on," because that's not like a little Easter egg, is it? That's not a little thing that pops up again in 2 seasons' time. It's like, oh, that's why they did that in season 1. This is a pretty big. It's not a pretty big, but a reasonably popular character that was in a couple of big scenes. So. Yes.
I think people would be really annoyed if he doesn't explain Mrs. Flood. I mean, as I said, there's certain things that, we can kind of overlook, and it's almost fun not to have them explained. But I think Mrs. Flood is one that people are waiting for that reveal. I do think that might... Yeah, he's got to be kidding. Come on. I mean, he's done an interview in SFX magazine this month, which is people have been screenshotting, and he's come out with quite a few things in there, like... Mavity, he says he's never explaining that. It was just a joke and a bit of fun, and people read into it too much. And there's lots of things that he's not explaining, it seems. But I think Mrs. Flood is one that I think that one. I think if he wasn't to explain that, I think the internet would probably explode. I think the fans really want that explanation. Yeah,
that's true. I think we need some kind of we need something, right? It can't just be especially when you have a character like that that's breaking the fourth wall, speaking to us as and all that. That needs to have a little, There are some things that I think are really cool to not be explained. Like you said, not everything does, and it's cool to for everybody to have their own headcanon and their own sort of explanation for things that we don't get told. But I think with characters like that, we do. We absolutely need to know. So Russell, we know you listen. As always, this is 404. Notepad out, pen out. Take notes. And so just a quick one, Russell. We need to know who Mrs. Flood is. End of story.
Otherwise, I fear there could be trouble. I mean, it's the only thing really hanging over, leading people into series 2. It's it's the only thing that's keeping them entertained is trying to have theories around who she is. So if he doesn't explain it, dread to think his door will be bashed down. There'll be Daleks and Cybermen cosplayers going, "Russell, we've come for you." Oh, it could be carnage.
Yeah, we'll all be unhappy. Not to the point that we'll be dicks and go on social and start destroying the show or Russell in any way, shape or form. But we will not enjoy our cornflakes that day.
Keyboard warriors.
We find out that we have no... Yeah, it won't be like that, of course. But anyway, that's Russell being a little bit cryptic on the whole Mrs. Flood thing. Hopefully we'll get an answer to that. But no other news kicking around. And the other sort of announcement or bit of news that we will come on to in a second is, of course, the Season 25 Blu-ray collection, which we'll get onto in a second. But before all of that, dude, how has your couple of weeks been since we last recorded? Have you done anything Who related?
No, I've not done much Who related, I'm afraid. No, I was rather pleased to see that Shooty has been announced for LFCC. His prices are a bit high, mind. The prices are a bit eye-watering. Oh. But I was like, wow, Shooty doing his first con. That's pretty cool. Yeah, he's a bit pricey though, mate. So £125 for an autograph, $95 for a photo, and I don't know how much the Diamond Pass is, where you get all of that and a little badge or something.
Bloody hell.
But yeah, I won't be in the country when he's here, so that's kind of taken me out of the game anyway. So I haven't got to worry about having this dilemma over whether I can afford it or not. But I think I might have been tempted with a photo, if I'm honest. But I won't be here. But what about you? You tempted?
No, dude, not at all. I mean,
no, too much.
Well, it's weird, isn't it? Because you and I were talking before we were recording, and we were saying that in previous London Film Comic Cons, where you and I had a photo with David Tennant and Chris Eccleston, and we've obviously had loads of autograph stuff over the years from pretty much everyone that's been in Doctor Who, I think, who's still with us, who have been at things like LFCC or Collectomania, or those sorts of things. And it's kind of weird that for the last, I don't know, 6 years, 5, 6 years, maybe 7 years, whenever somebody gets announced at a convention and then they see the price, there's always this initial shock. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. In actual, if you look at all the prices and everything for the majority of popular guests over the years, the prices have all been pretty much fairly consistent now. So I don't know why it's a huge shock to everybody. The only thing that I would say is a bit of a beep is the autograph price. I can't get my head around why the autograph is more expensive than the photo. You would have thought that just the logistics of having to run a photo shoot and equipment and doing all that, why that's cheaper. Because I think what's the photo shoot? Is it £95? I think
95. Yeah.
So you and I paid that, or roughly that, for people like Tennant and Eccleston and stuff. So that's in line with previous Doctor Who actors and so on. But yeah, the autograph price, mate, is ridiculous. I mean, yeah. What's the going rate for somebody like Colin Baker and McCoy and stuff for their autograph? I think it's 20 quid? 25 quid?
Yeah, I think Colin's 25, yeah.
See, I'd happily pay that.
McCoy might be a bit more expensive because he's got The Hobbit and he's got a Hobbit fan, so he might be like 30. True. I don't know.
But dude, each and every year, I'd happily turn up to a convention, have a 5-minute chat with McCoy, pay 20 quid for an autograph. You know, I'd happily do that. But yeah, for Shooty, mate, £125 for an autograph. Bearing in mind that when you take a photo with somebody at a convention, I'm aware that it's only, 3 seconds that you're next to that person before they sort of nudge you on. When you go to get an autograph, it's not that much better, really. Like when you're at the table, you have maybe 30 seconds before the people are nudging you on. You're like, oh, I love... You know, you get all the people in front of you. Oh, I absolutely love your Doctor. I love you. You know, all the rest. You know, I've really warmed to this episode and I loved you in that thing. And they're sort of smiling away and everything. And then it's like, well, it's nice to meet you. And the person's like, yep, come on, keep the line moving. So it's not that much better, you know, to have a few more seconds, but have an extra. So I don't know. The other thing to bear in mind is that everybody has a different perception of value, right? Let's bear that in mind as well. What you and I perceive as good value, somebody else might look at 125 quid and be like, oh my God, that's great. You know, I don't mind queuing up for 45 minutes, pay 125 quid, meet Shooty, get his autograph. I'm happy. So if that's your thing, you know, if you feel like that's good value, then that's cool. But to answer your initial question, no. If I end up going to LFCC Winter, I will not be paying that money for Shooty. No.
I have to agree with you about the price. I don't get it. I mean, I always prefer a photo anyway because that's you with the actor. An autograph, you know, I could do that for you round the back of LSCC by the bins, you know. Especially Shooty's autograph. It's like a little scribble. I've seen it. So yeah, I don't get that autograph price at all. I wouldn't pay that, I'm afraid. But because I've got photos with all the other Doctors with that sort of blue screen, you know, sorry, not blue screen, the blue backdrop the LFCC use. Yeah, I might be, you know, if I was in the country, I wouldn't be happy to pay that because it's a lot of money, but I probably would be tempted just to, you know, have him next to all the others in my frame because I've literally got them all. So the sort of completist in me wants him in there. And especially as I've been liking his Doctor so far, you know, not so much the stories, but, you know, I'm liking him as the Doctor. So I feel like if I was here, I might have been tempted to go and get the photo, even though it's expensive. But you're right. I think when Eccleston was first announced for LFCC, remember that was his first convention. He was pretty sure he was 95. I remember he was a lot because, you know, I remember sort of really struggling with my conscience over the price for Eccleston at the time, thinking, but he said he's not going to do any conventions and he's doing one, so he's, you know, if he doesn't enjoy it, he may never do them again. Of course, now he's gone on to do loads, but, you know, at the time it was like, I think I'm going to just bite the bullet and pay it because I'll, you know, in case I don't get another chance. And I think he was 95.
I'm pretty sure
I can't remember now, but he was a lot. Yeah. So it's pretty standard price, but
no, I read you. And they haven't announced all the guests yet for the Winter Con, which is not till I think it's end of October, middle of November, something like that. And
I think it's November.
Yeah, so they'll probably announce a bunch more people in between now and then. But Bonnie Langford's going to be there.
If they announce Millie, mate, I'll be well upset. I'd love to meet. I think I'd like to meet Millie. Well, I would as much as Shooty actually, because she was the sort of shining star from this series we've just had. I'd love to meet Millie actually. I think she's cool.
Yeah, same. Yeah. But in terms of Doctor Who, other than Shooty, you've got Bonnie Langford's going to be there, and also Colin Baker. And I would assume that between now and then, McCoy will be added alongside probably, I don't know, a bunch of other classic Who actors. Maybe McGann will be there as well.
Yeah, he hasn't done an LFCC for a while, McGann. He's done a few others conventions recently, but I haven't seen him at LFCC for a bit.
Yeah,
whereas I think McCoy and Colin, I think I don't know if they even bother going home, do they? They're always there. So they probably just sort of pack up. They've probably got a room upstairs in the Olympia.
Yeah.
Come on, Colin, let's go.
True.
Until the next one.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you're down in the sort of southern end of the country, though, before LFCC Winter, there's Collectomania. Milton Keynes is back. I think that returned last year. They did it last year, and now it's back this year. or maybe this year, I can't remember. But Collectomania Milton Keynes used to be a great little convention, and McCoy's already been announced for that one, alongside a few not Doctor Who fans. But that could be a cool little one if you want to satisfy your convention needs before the winter LFCC. Collectomania's back.
Is that back in the shopping centre? Because it used to be in the shopping centre, and many a happy Collectomania I had in the shopping centre. But then they moved it to the stadium out, in Milton Keynes, and it was awful.
It is back,
I remember
mate,
meeting Alex Kingston and Peter Davison in like a tent that was blowing all around in the wind, and they looked so miserable that day. It was terrible when they moved it. But I think it's gone back to the shopping centre.
It has, yeah. So in Milton Keynes, there's a very big shopping centre called Centre MK, and in the middle of it is a huge space, huge hall, and they normally take. So yeah, it's back in the shopping centre, dude, which is cool. Yes.
Yeah, many happy memories of that. That's where I met Kenny Baker.
Same.
And he put his sandwich on the autograph. He goes, he wasn't in the best of moods that day, but it's still nice to meet him.
I remember,
RTD.
Yeah, years ago, Collectomania, meeting John Barrowman for the first time there. Met David Prowse, Kenny Baker.
David Prowse.
Loads, but I've met loads of people at Collectomania rather than LFCC. So yeah, it's a cool little con, that one. Yeah,
I met the Hulk there. That Lou
Ferrigno. Yeah,
Lou Ferrigno. I met him there. All the
nice.
Lots of people from Blake 7 I met there that are sadly no longer with us. Blake. Yeah. I met Blake himself. Actually, he wasn't even a guest. He was. Jacqueline Pearce was there, who plays Servalan Blake 7, and Blake, Gareth Thomas himself, was in a pub up the road, and she texted him and said, I've told Gareth to come down, and he just come down and chatted to us all and signed a few things, and it was just so cool. It's like, I've just met Blake and he wasn't even a guest. Yeah. Good times, mate. Wow. I'm kind of glad they're back. Maybe tempted to go. When is it again?
September.
I'll be in America.
Yeah.
I'm missing it all.
Oh, mate.
Maybe I won't bother going back.
Oh, dude. Right. The other big convention that I don't think you and I have ever been to is the MCM Comic-Con at the ExCeL in London. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how much Doctor Who focused they are, or other big... I think it's normally usually Star Wars and some other bits, but that's in October, so the month before. So if you're really into your conventions, you've got Collectomania Comic-Con September, MCM London October, LFCC Winter in November. So the back end of the year could be cool if you're on that convention train. Yeah. Yeah,
I've never done MCM, mate. I thought you had for some reason, but it's funny. I was talking to someone about MCM at the weekend because I was looking at pictures of LFCC and I was like, God, they've never spent any money on updating it or doing anything. They still put the guests in those sort of crummy old, put up slatted walls that look really dingy and musty, with the black drape. It's all so dated. And then whenever I see pictures of MCM, which I've never been to, it looks like it's all colourful. The backdrops have all got, MCM behind them in great big letters, and it all looks really cool and funky. And I'm like, they put so much more effort into MCM, whereas LFCC have been using those same, it's like a table that you used to get at school, like a fold-out table. It just looks so naff. Whereas at least MCM seem to make a bit of effort. But I've never been, I have to admit. So, I'm just going by the photos I see.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. The Showmasters events are like the Golden Globes, whereas MCM is like the Oscars, I guess. It's like the Showmasters ones are a little bit cheaper, a little bit more. Yeah. Anyway, there's lots going on, I think is the best way. And also, while we're on this, we really should crack on, but while we're on the subject of this, remember there's very cool smaller events that happen for Doctor Who. You're a big advocate of the Phantom events, in Chiswick.
Yes,
where they get a lot of classic Who. Yeah, so that's a really cool one if you've not been to that before. And there's another one that kicks around as well, isn't there? A couple of others as well that are very cool. I think there's one called Hooverville, which is up in Derby, I believe. We haven't been to that one before, should do that. And there's another one as well. Yeah, there's another one, the name escapes me. There's obviously quite a few, but there's another one that's reasonably popular, like Hooverville. I think it might be Utopia.
I don't know which one you mean.
I'm
Utopia, yeah.
I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I think that might be another
I think that might be run by the Phantom guys. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So, key takeaway of the day, listener, if you're in the UK at least, there's always lots going on. So get off your beep and go and have a look and go and spend lots of money.
Absolutely.
On autographs, yes. Rightio, dude. Before we crack on with the rest of the episode, just want to remind you to make sure that you are following or subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast so you won't miss an episode when they go out every Friday, plus the monthly roundtable episodes. So make sure you are following or subscribing for that stuff. And you can also listen online for free over at bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk, and you can check out all of the reviews and articles and so on from the writing team. Those guys are awesome. The latest post was from Jordan, rounding up all of his reviews for season 1. So go and check that out. We're on the socials too, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. There are links on the website. Come and chat Doctor Who as we post tidbits and chat with you lot throughout the week on there. Plus we have a very cool free Discord server. So there's a link on the website. Hop in there and chat Doctor Who with lots of other cool Who fans. And don't forget to remember to go and check out my co-host channel on YouTube. It is, of course, The Geek's Handbag.
The Geek's Handbag, yeah, go check out my channel. Lots of unboxings, location visits, all sorts of stuff, conventions, visits. It's all on there, The Geek's Handbag. Go and have a look.
The whole shebang, basically.
The
whole shebang. Right, let's land the old TARDIS and do a bit of news, shall we?
A bit of news.
Rightio, so the big piece of news and the only bit of news that we've got for you this week is the announcement of the Doctor Who Season 25 box set Blu-ray collection has finally been announced. I think you and I were had a conversation months ago about what we thought the next collection was going to be, and who knew, dude, that they were going to finish up McCoy's era with Season 25. And also, obviously, capping off Classic Who, if you're counting the TV movie or not. But yeah, dude, Season 25. Who knew?
Mate, I've never pre-ordered a box set faster than this. I tell you, same. I mean, even though I know that now that they do make more, so they don't sell out quite as quickly as they used to. You know, I think they've learned that actually, there's quite a demand for these sets. Yeah, you know, it was just, I was like, there's no way I'm missing out on this. I as soon as I saw it come up, I pre-ordered it straight away. And actually, for a few days, it was showing as out of stock on Amazon. So they must have sold their initial first batch really, really quickly. It's now back in stock, I believe, but for about 4 days, it was showing as currently unavailable. We don't know when we'll get this, if we'll get this back in stock. So I was like, oh my word, you know, maybe I was good to get in there quick. But yeah, I think it's back up for pre-order. It's one of those seasons that I've been so looking forward to coming to the collection range, you know, and obviously like the extras that we're getting on this one look incredible. It's not just that it's a classic season, you know, with Remembrance, and also Greatest Show in the Galaxy, which I think is an underrated gem of a story. So I'm so like buzzing for this, mate. I literally can't wait for this set to come out. I wish it was coming out sooner, because I think it's October the something or other, middle of October, is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, 21st. Yeah,
21st. So yeah, immediately pre-order. I don't even need to ask you. I'm sure you were straight on it as well. Yeah,
dude, straight on it. Yeah, so yeah. What have you seen the video that's gone, the trailer for it as well?
Yeah, and I love it. It really got me hyped.
Yeah, so cool. They didn't do they didn't put like a narrative behind it and do like a story thing that they've done with some of the previous box sets. But you know what, dude? I didn't really care. It was just hearing like Sophie Aldred talk about stuff and little clips that we saw for the Behind the Sofa special feature, and it looks like a really, really good chat as well. Who's the dude that does the interviews for these? What's his name?
Toby Haydock?
Toby Haydock's in there, but Toby Haydock, but the other guy with the glasses who does the actual sit down.
Matthew Sweet.
Matthew Sweet, yeah. Yeah, it looks like he's got a really good chat on this one with Sophie Aldred and Andrew Cartmel.
Oh, brilliant.
So that's going to be cool. And because I think there's a little bit of, there's going to be, if anyone's read the Script Doctor book from Andrew Cartmel, you will know that there are certain sort of things that were happening around the show at this point, and around, involving certain people at the BBC that were quite high up and that sort of thing. And actually, dude, and this is probably a decent reminder for our listeners who have not heard it yet, we interviewed Andrew Cartmel on the show a few years ago now. Mm-hmm. I'll stick a link actually in the show notes because we had a really good chat with him about a lot of this stuff. So I think, I think that chat with Matthew Sweet's going to be a really good one with him, but also with Sophie as well. And mate, the cover art is beautiful. Like Lee Bindings just smashed that again. It looks just so good. And then the Behind the Sofa stuff, as always, they've drafted in loads of people for that, not just the people who are in season 25, but who's in there. So Wendy Padbury, Sarah Sutton, who else? Nicola Bryant's there, Jeanette Fielding, Bonnie Langford. So there's loads of people, dude, as well as McCoy, obviously.
Amazing.
It's going to be a cracker of a series. And what else is on there in terms of special features? Looking for Dursley.
I know they've done. Yeah. Oh, Looking for Dursley.
Yeah. The Making of Doctor Who, a rare vintage documentary from 1988, only previous available on VHS. We've got the VHS extended version of Silver Nemesis, which, take your pick on if you want to watch that one or not. Silver Nemesis Special Edition Omnibus, special cut-down feature-length version in the tradition of the 70s Christmas repeats. That might be cool, dude, actually.
Yeah.
That might be cool. The Collectors, the 1980s. Emily Cook chats to Doctor Who collectors about their treasures. Why you're not on there, mate, I've no idea.
I'm waiting for the phone call.
Doctor Who, The Escape Room, Team 7th Doctor, so McCoy, Sophie Aldred and Bonnie Langford do an escape room, which is going to be awesome to watch.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yep. Yeah. Something called When Sophie Met Leslie. So Sophie Aldred chats to Leslie Dunlop, her co-star from the Happiness Patrol. Yeah, which is going to be good. Interview with Stephen Mansfield. I look at all the practical effects and how they did all that stuff back in the day. Studio and location footage, hours of raw footage of outtakes and all captured stuff on location and all that. That's going to be cool. Dude, just loads of really cool stuff. I know, obviously updated special effects for Remembrance of the Daleks, Silver Nemesis and The Greatest Show, but not for Happiness. Hold on a second.
No, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure how they've done Happiness because that's the one they're screening at the BFI, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not,
because I think they've added almost looks like Blade Runner style graphics over it. Look pretty cool, actually.
That's true. Yeah, it's not mentioned in the official blurb, but yeah, you're right. I think all 4 episodes have had the special effects treatment. So,
yeah,
dude, it's going to be cool. I can't wait to get this one. Obviously, I'm a bit biased because McCoy is my classic Doctor, but mate, it does look like a good set.
Yeah, and I think it's like a whopping 8-disc set, isn't it? So it's going to be a big old chunky box, this one. So there's obviously a lot of extra features on it because it's only 4 stories, so that's like 2 discs per story. So this is going to be a real treat, mate. Like you, I'm absolutely buzzing for it. And I'm not the biggest fan of updated effects. I've often said I think they date quicker than the original effects, but what I've seen of the little screenshots from the Happiness Patrol, I think that is a story that could benefit from these little touches. From what I've seen, I think they may have, this could enhance it, because they've just sort of added little computer screens, and they've sort of fleshed out the sort of world building that we had in that story by the looks of it. And as I said, I think this is the one they're showing at the BFI. I was rather gutted. I didn't get a ticket to the BFI because it sold out like literally in seconds. I didn't even bother going on because I knew that was going to happen. And a couple of friends messaged straight away to say, I didn't manage to get tickets. I was there when they went on sale straight away. And I was like, yeah, well, it's always the same now, because they have, it used to be, members got first dibs, I think, but now they have a thing called patrons, which get first dibs, then your members. And so by the time members go on, patrons have pretty much snapped them all up. And then obviously the members buy them up in like seconds, and then they go on general sale at 5 o'clock, and they've all gone, hours ago, before the general public even get a chance. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think they need to start doing more than one screening for these things. It's ridiculous, like how quickly these sell now, and people just sort of miss out. I mean, I don't think I haven't been to the last two because I just can't get a ticket, So sadly, I won't be at this one, which is a shame, because I would have loved to have gone to this event. It's one of the seasons that I'm, have a particular fondness for. Like you, I love the McCoy era. So a bit gutted about that. But anyway, it's great that they're doing another event, and I don't know if Maria got one. Did she, as our roving reporter, going to it? Do you know?
You know what?
I think she did, actually. I think she missed out.
Yeah, I forgot to ask her when we recorded yesterday. I don't think so.
No, she put something in the Discord last night, and I think she was saying the same thing, like, oh, blimey, because she's a member, and I'm pretty sure she didn't even manage to get one, even being a member. So, yeah, I don't know, bit of a shame. But anyway, yes, can't wait for this, mate. And never mind the BFI screening, I just can't wait to get this, on the shelf and in the player, because these extras look amazing. They
do, yeah. So you are correct, dude. It is back in stock on Amazon at the moment. So if you want this set, guys, you have to, it will definitely sell out. They always do. Every single one of these sets always sells out a little while after they go on sale. So if you do want one, as always, you need to pre-order. So it's back in stock on Amazon. And then there's a handful of other UK retailers that will have this as well. So people like HMV, I don't know if Zavvi still do them.
I think they do.
There's a couple of others.
No, I haven't used Zavvi in years, but
yeah. So there's 3 or 4, maybe 5 retailers that will stock them. So yeah, it's going to be a good one. So if you want that, pre-order it, and it lands on the 21st of October at the moment. So
yes,
there we go.
Bring it on.
Right, news out of the way. It's review time, bud. What we got?
Yeah, well, talking of season, oh no, this is season 26, isn't it? What am I talking about? Getting my seasons muddled up. Yeah, so we're on to McCoy's last season, and the last McCoy story that we haven't reviewed until now. This has been bumping around our review schedule for quite some time, listener. We've been trying to put off, we didn't want this McCoy era to end for us, but here it is. It's our review of The Curse of Fenric.
Black fog turned day into night, and the fingers of death reached out from the waters to reclaim the treasures we have stolen.
The earth shall fall asunder, and all of heaven too. The wolves of Fenric shall return for their treasure, and then shall the dark evil rule eternally.
I know who you are.
Don't move! Hands up!
About time too. Call yourself Royal Marines?
These two are unauthorized personnel.
Unauthorized? We're here by urgent request of the War Office.
The dark evil lies waiting to see, and one by one, our crew is being killed.
Come on. Come and play with us.
You are touched by the curse of Fenric.
What's happened?
Will you stop asking me these questions?
Tell me! It's like it's some kind of a game and only you know the rules.
Kill them.
Peace!
Ace. What a great trailer.
Yeah, good one, that. Yeah.
I like the music.
And it's one that does the episode justice, I think. You know, sometimes where we grab a trailer for an episode and the trailer sounds absolutely epic and pretty decent. And then, in relation to the story, it's like, yeah, the trailer was potentially better. However, in this one, the trailer does this justice, I think. So, the last...
Go on.
Mate, you've choked me up before we played the trailer saying that stuff. Yeah. The Curse of Fenric, then. The last McCoy one. So, it was first broadcast back on the 25th of October, 1989. What a cool week, or a few weeks around Halloween it would have been to watch this story. 25th of October 1989, finished up on the 15th of November. It's a 4-parter. It was written by Ian Briggs, overseen by Andrew Cartmel, and was directed by Nicholas Mallet, and there is some additional direction uncredited by John Nathan Turner. It stars, obviously, Sylvester McCoy as the 7th Doctor, Sophie Aldred as Ace, and then about a dozen supporting cast members. And the synopsis is: the TARDIS materialises at a secret naval base off the coast of Northumberland during the Second World War. Dr. Judson, a scientist there, has created the Ultima machine, an early computer designed to break German codes. But Judson also has a much more sinister use for the machine. He plans to translate the ancient runes in the crypt of the nearby St. Jude's Church, which will release Fenric, an evil entity from the dawn of time, whom the Doctor trapped 17 centuries earlier. As Fenric's Hemivores attack, the Doctor must once again face the entity in a battle which will reveal devastating truths for Ace. ... So, buddy, what are your thoughts then, initially, for The Curse of Fenric?
Well, I'm just going to cut straight to the chase, mate. I think this is a belter of a story, and I think it's a genuine classic. I really do, and I think it stood the test of time really well, actually, as a story. I think it still holds up really, really well. And considering the budget the show was on when this was made back in, what was it, 1988? Or are we in 89 now? But even so, whenever. Back in those days, Doctor Who was on like a shoestring budget. And, you could say the monsters look a bit rubbery and whatever. But I think overall this episode looks fantastic considering the conditions it was made under. And it's a really good story. I love the themes that it explores, not just good versus evil, but this thing about testing your faith, God, all of this stuff comes into it. The war, it's so, all the little plot threads, even Ace's backstory, are so beautifully interwoven into the story that none of it feels clunky or a bit awkward, or it flows brilliantly, and all of the themes come together at the end and make sense and play out in some way. It's honestly, mate, I think it's a brilliant story. I've watched it many times over the years. I watched it again to make some notes, even though I know it really, really well. I watched it again just to see. It's always difficult. It's always different. I mean, watching a story through a critical lens, like when we come to review something, you try and look for the good and bad in it to sort of make some notes. And I was watching this again this week thinking, this is really good stuff. And it's before I put it on, I'm thinking, is it overrated? Is it, am I thinking it's better than it is? And no, I watched this again this week and got to the end of it and thought, it's a cracker. There's so many good moments in it. And one of the things I think that, when I talked about the production and the budget, one of the things that I think really helps bring this story to life is that the cast are all taking it really seriously. Like, everyone seems so into their characters and the story itself. There's not anybody in this where I sort of roll my eyes and think, oh dear, where did they find them? Were they just some jobbing actor who came in and couldn't care less about it? Everyone in it is on the ball in this. Even Nicholas Parsons, who was known sort of predominantly for being like a game show host and comedy, and he often played the vicar, so he, you might think he might just be going through the motions and having a bit of a laugh. I'm in Doctor Who. Even he, mate, is superb in this story and is absolutely taking his character seriously. So, yeah, I think it's an absolute classic in every sense. And when people talk about, obviously the show was axed at this point. It was, we had one story after this before it went off the air for, many years. And people often say that it had just started to find its feet and get back on track. And I watched this and I think, yeah, it was absolutely finding its way. And although maybe the show did need a rest to regather itself, you can see from this that it was getting back to doing some really good stories and becoming the sort of quality science fiction show that we knew and loved. So it's a great story, mate. I love it.
It is, isn't it? It's a fantastic story. So I'm glad. I got the feeling that you like this one anyway.
I do.
Just because over the years that we've chatted about McCoy's era and stuff, I've never heard you say, "I'll steer clear of Fenric" or anything like that. So I kind of had an inkling that you like this one, but mate, it's such a cool story. It really is a great story, and in a way, I kind of feel I'm devastated in one way because we won't review any more McCoy stories again, unless there's some huge, weird, strange thing that happens with Russell and the BBC, and they bring back some sort of Classic Who spin-off thing, which is unlikely to happen. But in another way, I feel just so happy that that over the years, my sort of turnaround and view on McCoy's era sort of changed for the better, really. I remember many, many years ago now, moons ago, when I was going through Classic Who before you and I met, and before starting the podcast and stuff, and watching loads of Classic Who stories. And whenever I got to a McCoy one, I was like, oh my God. This is, because I had binge watched a load of, I'd done a bit of research and just did searches for like, what are the best Classic Who episodes and, all that stuff. So I'd binge watched all the big uns. I'd been, some of Tom Baker's big stories and some Pertwee stuff, some Hartnell stuff, obviously. And, so I'd watched, what fandom had considered some of the best of Classic Who. So by the time I got round to watching more of McCoy, I think Remembrance of the Daleks was one that was recommended as being one of the best from McCoy's. And I wasn't really a fan of that, as you know, when I first watched it. And whenever I got to McCoy's story, I was like, oh, bloody hell. This is not great. But then, like I've said many times on the show and to you, dude, there was like a switch that went off. There was just one day I just sat there and I thought, I want to watch some Classic Who. Do you know what? I'm going to watch McCoy's era. I don't know what made me do that, what made me want to watch that stuff. But there was just something that flipped, and I just had huge appreciation for like the show still being made. Like you said, we'll come on to it in a little while, but the whole, people at some of the execs at the BBC just really not wanting the show to go on, so they just slashed the budgets, and they just really did. Andrew Cartmel and J&T and all those dudes, and they just really just got on with it and just made the best that they could with what they had, which was not a lot at all. So just huge appreciation for all of that stuff, and just my love of McCoy that just blossomed from that rewatch. So anytime that I watch McCoy now, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Some of the stories from his era, and this is included in that, are so underrated and great. And especially when you look at the bigger picture that could have evolved as well. I know you shouldn't really sort of, ponder too much on what ifs and shoulda, couldas and all that stuff. But I'm sure Andrew Cartmel will dive into it when we watch those special features. But when you and I chatted to him, when we interviewed him, and he was talking about some of the plans that he had for McCoy's Doctor, in the seasons that would have followed after this, it's just so, because we're at the penultimate story from all of Classic Who wrapping up at this point, right? So after this, we get Survival, which is the closing episode where the rug was pulled from under them. So this was really like the tail end of Classic Who. So, but if you read Andrew's book or listen to that episode that we did with him, there really was so much creative stuff in the tank ready to go. So for season 27 and season 28 and so on, and really developing McCoy's Doctor into something a lot more complex and darker. When you consider all of that stuff, mate, and then you watch, especially these stories at the end, like Survival and The Curse of Fenric, it really just does whet your appetite, and you think, Christ, McCoy was just brilliant in this story as well. Just so good. The scene towards the end, which we'll come on to, when he needs to break the curse so that Ace can be free, and he goes into that sort of dark mode where he tells Fenric to kill her and all that. All of those bits, mate, like just amazing stuff. And you could see... I mean,
I just got to say, I know we'll get to McCoy when we talk about the cast and stuff, but he's absolutely into the character at this point. And, as an actor, he's really started to think about the character of the Doctor and what he wants to do with it and how he wants to play it. He's absolutely immersed himself into being the Doctor at this point as an actor. And it's really helped by the direction that Andrew Cartmel and everyone else involved is taking the show. Like you said, this much more sort of almost manipulative Doctor, this darker Doctor, because he starts off, as we know, quite clownish, the Seventh Doctor. If you look at his first series, he's quite a light-hearted Doctor, and then this is what I love. There's like a real progression to the Seventh Doctor where he does gradually, you see the layers start to peel, and you start to see a slightly different character under all the fun. There's this slightly more dangerous Seventh Doctor underneath it all. And if they'd have done another series, I think they were definitely going to tap into that. I think Big Finish did some audios based around, the stories that would have been in the next series. And although it's many years since I've listened to them, I remember there's a lot of stuff involving the Doctor manipulating Ace and stuff. So, I think it would have been very interesting if they'd explored that. I think I would have, although I think I agree in some senses that maybe the show needed a slight rest to regather itself. I do think another series would have been great. I think we could have had one more series out of these guys for sure. And I think it would have been a really, really interesting series, because Sylv and Sophie together at this point are just working so well together. I think another series for sure could have been really good.
Yeah,
but sadly
agreed.
It wasn't to be. But
yeah, you're absolutely right, man. I think at this point, the show did need a rest. There's no doubt about it. It needed to clean house a little bit and just put it to bed just for a while, And it's weird, isn't it? Because you and I were saying, well, I don't know if you agreed with me, but I was saying that this was probably a year or so ago about the show now in its current state, saying that it really just needs a rest. After Jodie's era, it needs to just go away for a while. A few years just to, and then come back strong. Ultimately, it didn't happen, but I think in this case, it did it a world of good. However, like you, I do feel like at least one more season just to explore the characters more than anything, the Doctor and Ace more than anything, would have been really cool. But coming back to this story, we'll come on to the characters in a second. But in terms of the production on it and all that stuff, like we were saying, it didn't have much money at all at this point. And I think that's why we sort of shy away from things like, the CSO stuff and special effects and all that stuff. The most we get in this is like the odd sort of lightning bolt, right? And that sort of thing for the majority. And I think this is why some of these stories age really well, is because I'm pretty sure back in the day when if you were a fly on the wall and you were hearing John Nathan Turner and Andrew Cartmel and the director and all those guys talking about when going into production with these things and how they were going to accomplish certain things in the script and the story, I'm pretty sure they spoke about wanting to do more in terms of special effects and all that stuff. But because of the lack of budget and having to do a lot of it practically, so a lot of the camera work is amazing in this stuff, dude, like the underwater stuff.
Yeah.
The bits as you're sort of in and out of the crypt and stuff, and the location work and all that stuff.
On top
I think
of the
that
church.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. I think it makes it age a lot better than if you had all these outdated special effects that they had to work with at the time. So, production wise, dude, it's obviously done on old sort of TV tape. It's not done on 16mm film or anything like that. It's still on, TV tape and all that stuff. But don't know. It's just framed nicely. It's all done really well. The location, I think it's all on location. Unless
I think it is.
Yeah. So production wise, dude, it looks really good. It's paced really well. It's edited really well together. There are certain scenes that needed to be slowed down a little bit. Conversations with people. I mean, there's a scene where the camera's just very slowly panning through the church, and there's what's his name? Who plays the vicar? Very famous actor.
Nicholas Parsons.
Yes, yeah. Nicholas Parsons is up in the pulpit, and he's just, saying this. I think it's a hymn out loud or a passage from something, and it's just him in the church. He's not talking to anybody. He's just doing it for his own sake. But they take the time to, to slowly bring the camera forward and do all that. And yeah, and then it's obviously a bit of action, when the soldiers are having a scrap and when they're fighting the hemovores at the end and all that stuff. So, dude, in terms of production and how it looks and edited, framed, all that stuff, you can't really fault it. Really, it looks it's very, very watchable, right, for 4 parts.
Yeah, I think it really helps having it all on location as well, because I think originally they'd sort of planned to do it half like they normally would with a story like this. So you'd have, all the interiors would be studio and then, some location footage. But for whatever reason, they've decided to do it all on location. I think it really helps to make the production look good. And like you said, it's very nicely directed as well. There's some beautiful shots in it. I think the pacing is good as well for the most part. It does flow really nicely and it builds. That's what I love. Every time I watch it, I'm sort of struck by how it starts off quite nice. They land, they get to meet people, and then as it just builds and builds and builds, suddenly you've got, like this mystery coming in with Dr. Judson, and the walls are writing on the walls is starting to illuminate, and it's like, what's all this about? And it really draws you in as a story. I mean, I think a lot of stories in the McCoy era, they are perhaps not perceived to be as good as the story themselves because of the production. I think Paradise Towers is a example of that. I think there's a really good story buried in there, but it sort of gets let down by the sort of way it looks. If you imagine Paradise Towers filmed in some grotty real location, I think it would have perhaps added something to it. But yeah, I think they utilise everything really well in this, in particular the locations like the church and everything, and obviously the water where they're jumping, where is that? Is that Dorset or wherever? They utilise the locations really well in this. The army barracks and that all look fantastic. And there's a lot of effort gone into this. When we say we think the show perhaps needed a rest, one thing I will say is you can see that the cast and the people working on it are absolutely doing their best with what they've got. I think it was more that all of the stuff surrounding the show, and like you said, the people high up in the BBC who had no interest in Doctor Who, I think that's kind of what affected it. Maybe that's why it just needed to just, stop for a while, gather itself, look at what was working, what wasn't working. But in terms of the people that are involved in the show at this time, I think everyone's really putting in 110% to make the best show they can with the resources they've got. I think the only person, and I'm not saying this to take credit away from him, but I know John Nathan Turner at this point, he'd wanted to move on. So he was practically forced to carry on being the producer because, there was no one else to take over, and he literally carried on so that the show wasn't axed. So you can understand if his enthusiasm wasn't on top form, but that's not to say he wasn't still doing a really good job in terms of what was going on around the show. I still think he's in there making sure that it's delivering something, and I think they delivered something really good with this story. Yeah.
Agreed, dude. And when we're talking about this story, we're talking about the version that we watched for review, which is the, I guess you could just call it the vanilla original version, the 4 parts.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple of different versions of it, right? So you've got the they did this kind of movie length special edition, didn't they, back in the early 2000s? That and that one had new special effects, and they re-edited some of the bits and stuff like that. So we didn't watch that one, and I think there's another one. The early 90s, I think that was a VHS release, and that had a few minutes of extra material thrown in there. So there's a few different, and also obviously more recently, the Tales of the TARDIS, all that stuff. So there's 3 or 4 versions of this knocking about. So we're talking about the original one. So if you bought the DVD back in the day, it's that one. The 4 parts.
Yeah, it's that one.
Yeah.
I get a bit confused with all the different versions, mate. I'll be honest with you, because I think you're right. There's at least 4, I think, slightly different versions, and they've got a few minutes of extra scenes, but I'm not quite sure which version it is, and it's on the Blu-ray collection set, and it's the one that they showed at the BFI to launch that set. I think that, to me, is the definitive version, because although, yes, for this review, I watched the original transmitted TV version, the original version, but the one we watched at the BFI for the collection set, and I'm guessing that's the special edition, whatever, I think that is probably the best version of it I've seen, because in that one, they've added in a few extra scenes, but they've also, so there's a lot of discontinuity, like with the sky and the rain, and 1 minute it's sunny, then they walk around the corner and it's raining and grey and dark. And what they've done is they sort of colour graded the scenes so that it sort of gradually, as the story gets darker, I think the sky and the weather gets worse, and it really adds like an atmosphere to it. And to be honest with you, you sort of pick up on it subconsciously, but when they were talking about it afterwards, they explained that that they'd done that, and I thought something. I couldn't work out what was different, but it had a slightly different atmosphere to it, and I remember thinking that is the definitive version. I absolutely love what they've done with it, because they haven't tinkered too much. They've just corrected or added a couple of little details to actually enhance the story. And so, I don't know what version that is, but it's on the collection, and I think that is probably the definitive version. But even the sort of 4-part TV one, I think, still stands up incredibly well today. And that's the one I watched for the review. So yeah. So listener as well, if you're not, if you haven't got this, or you have got that Blu-ray box set, the season 26 release. So there's 2 versions of it on that release. So on disc 1. You've got Curse of Fenric, which is the just the standard original 4-part version that you and I watched for the review this week, and that's just been restored for Blu-ray. So there's no upgraded effects, there's no additional stuff. It's just the original story, but it's just been sort of cleaned up a little bit. And then on disc 2, there's something called the extended VHS version. So that's what I mentioned a little while ago. It's the 4-part of VHS release, but it's been restored from a few different versions. So they haven't taken the VHS tape and upscaled it or anything. They've taken the sources wherever they got them from, compiled them together to match the VHS version, but they've also redone all the audio as well. So it's like a 5.1 surround mix, and it's got all the sort of updated effects and so on. So there are 2 versions on that Blu-ray set, the original one and then the extended version from the VHS tapes back in the day that they've restored and everything. So there are a few different versions kicking around, and there's also that one I mentioned earlier, which is like the feature film version, which is just one long edited version for that's supposed to play like a film, but that's not too bad. But yeah, you're right. The extended VHS version from the Blu-ray set is probably the best one to watch. But yeah, I don't know about you, mate, but I just watched the standard one for this review. Yeah. Oh yeah, I just watched the standard because I thought that's kind of what went out at the time. So it seems like the most faithful, if you like. I mean, I obviously remember I was watching this back in the day. I can remember watching this as it was transmitted, and I don't think I fully understood the story, as a whatever I would have been, 13-year-old, 15-year-old, I don't know. So I don't think in terms of like the casual viewer, there's quite a lot going on. I'm not sure, although I think this is a brilliant story, I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend it to someone who's never watched Doctor Who before, because I think you do have to follow it, and it absolutely, everything makes sense if you're watching it properly. But I think it is quite a complicated story in many ways, because this is the one they chose for the Tales of the TARDIS, isn't it? So this is on the Whoniverse thing on the iPlayer. You can watch this as like all the episodes edited together with little intros by Sylv and
Sophie.
What to say? Bonnie. Sophie, yeah. So it's a lovely that this is the story they've picked for his era, I think. But I had a friend over at the weekend, and she, has watched Doctor Who since 2005, but she's tried to sort of dip into the classics, but she started right at the beginning with the Hartnell ones, and she was like, I'm struggling with these. I'm like, well, yeah, they are a little bit slow. But this, we ended up watching this, and I was looking to see like how much she was into it and how much she was invested in it, and I think she quite enjoyed it. But I was just interested because I'm not sure it's that accessible to, someone that isn't like really into, it's quite a lot going on in this story, isn't it? But it seemed to hold her attention. I was quite pleased, if you know what I mean. I was sat there watching her, and she was sort of asking, "Oh, who's that?" And "Oh, that's Ace. I recognise her from the new series." So yeah, hello Joe, by the way, if you're listening. So yeah, but she didn't get to see the very end. She had to go off and do something, and I was like, "No, you're gonna miss the end where the whole thing comes to a climax." So I might have to get around to watch the last part. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Though it's a great story, but I think on a first watch I was completely lost as a 15-year-old watching this. It kind of, there was a bit too much going on, but obviously as an adult, I watch it and follow it, and I think everything really comes together really well in it. All the themes kind of get explored and they have a reason to be there, and it ties in really nicely with Ace's story as well. Her backstory in this is brilliant. I think the whole thing with the baby, and the fact that it's her mum and she hates her mum, but she can't hate the baby. And again, the faith thing plays into all of that, and there's some great stuff in it. Great themes, I think. Yeah,
and you're right with you probably wouldn't recommend this one to casual, like somebody said, give me a McCoy
not as a first story.
No, not the first one. Which is, I think that was a common thing as well, especially reviewers back in the day. I think that was a theme that ran through that, which is the first two episodes start off fairly top level. You don't need to sort of dive into any deeper levels to understand what's going on as such. But when you get into, especially episode 4, that's a little bit more, I don't want to say convoluted, but it does require you to have your thinking cap on in a few scenes and stuff like that, yeah, for sure. But story-wise, throughout the 4 episodes, though, regardless of what version you watch, it's very well put together. There wasn't a moment in each episode where I was like, right, I'm bored out of my head now. I can't wait for the next episode. Whatever. Every episode offers something, which is good. And
it's mature, isn't it? It's a mature story, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, before we get onto characters and stuff, it's got a really cool kind of horror theme to it, but that doesn't get in the way of the stories and the story and the characters, if that makes sense, because we've got the whole monsters coming out of the sea. We've got, some people call them vampires. The Doctor corrects, it's hemovores. So there are these kind of classic old Hammer horror, the whole Gothic church thing and the crypts underneath and the Viking curse and stuff. There are these big sort of tropes from old horror stories and stuff. But you would never really look back on this and talk about this as a horror story. That makes sense. It's not like, do you know what I mean? It's not, you wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's a fan. Like somebody said, give me like the scariest horror themed stories from Classic Who. You wouldn't recommend Curse of Fenric, because although it's got horror themes in there, they don't sort of muscle their way to the forefront. It's still all about the characters mainly and that sort of thing. So I thought that was good.
Well, also it's got that thing that you love as well, that you sort of you quickly grasp that the Doctor knows what's going on, but he's not telling anyone. And I know that's something you like when he's also, as it turns out, played a bit of a part in it all happening. So, but there's that great scene, isn't there, where Ace says to him, she actually forces him to stop in the middle of the action and say, no, you're not going to walk away. You know what's happening. Why won't you tell me? And I think that's a really good scene, because that's something the Doctor's done a few times. But Ace finally pulls him up on it. She's like, stop shutting me out. You know what's going on. You have since the moment we arrived. Now, come on. It's that thing, isn't it? And I know you love it when the Doctor kind of, it's all bubbling away inside his head. He does know what's going on, but he's not prepared to share it, sort of thing. So that's another thing I love about this story.
Yeah. And there was that scene, and there was a few scenes in this between the Doctor and Ace that were so good. Like you mentioned earlier, the two of them are working so well and the chemistry is so good. But that scene is very cool, where she screams at him, tell me, and then she... Yeah, that's it, tell me. She kind of wraps it up nicely for our benefit as well as her own, actually, the viewer, where she says something along the lines of, it's like you're the only one... It's like you're the one playing the game, but you're the only one that knows the rules, or something like that. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, great stuff.
Really cool, because that's kind of what we're thinking as we're watching these things. We're thinking, the Ace as the companion doesn't have all the insider knowledge that the Doctor has on these things and stuff like that. So you kind of get the feeling that they allude to it in the story anyway, that the Doctor knows about Fenric. They've got a history together, and he knows about, a few other things in the story, but he's not saying it out loud. So we're having to play a bit of a guessing game. But Ace is also doing exactly the same thing as the companion. She knows that he knows more than he's letting on. And it gets to that point where it just breaking point where she's like, no, not anymore. I need to know what's going on, sort of thing. It's great scenes like that, dude. Yeah.
Ace gets some great moments in this story. It's a brilliant story for Sophie Aldred, and she really takes what's on the page and goes for it. And I love the fact that she, although the Doctor's trying to solve it all himself until she says, I'm not a kid anymore. You've got to trust me. You've got to let me in and let me help. All the way through, she's actually solving things. I love that scene where she's with Dr. Judson, the miserable old so-and-so, and she's like trying to talk to him, and he's like, shut up. And she's like, but I know what it is. It's a logic diagram. And he's like, oh my God, yes. And it's like, yeah, Ace has solved it. She's ahead of you all, and also the stuff, obviously, with her mum and all this sort of thing. She gets some really good stuff to do in this story, and as I said, a lot of it actually sort of centers around her, which is nice. But yeah, I like that bit. But it shows she's intelligent. It also shows that she's growing up. She can look after herself. She gets right in the thick of the action. And she's clever, When people talk about, classic companions being dumb and they stand at the side and, scream and stuff, Ace is so far removed from that stereotype. She is a really strong companion. And this is a story that really highlights how good she is, I think.
Yes, absolutely, dude. She's a great companion, man. She's really cool, and especially in stories like this where she has a bit more weight behind her character. Not just because the whole thing with her mum that she sees as a wee baby, and that whole thing around, that being her mum, and somehow Fenric had created this whole situation, and she played into that and stuff. But even before that bit, she definitely has more influence over what's going on in the story. Whereas, as we know, in a lot of stories, the companion's just sort of along for the ride, if that makes sense. It's the Doctor doing everything, and the companion's just sort of wandering around following or whatever. But no, she does have loads to do, and she's great. We'll come on to her in a second. But there are a few things that aren't that great in the story, though. I'm not just going to cover it in glory, from top to bottom. There are a few things that are a little bit amiss for me. The first one is some of the direction in the action scenes could have been a little bit more I was going to say realistic, but I don't know. They could have been a bit more oomph to them. And what I mean by that is there were quite a few scenes where, for example, there's a scene where one of the Russian soldiers is being sort of overrun by about 7 or 8 different hemovores towards the end on the beach. And what happens is the soldier just stands there looking at them, doesn't fire his weapon or anything. And then as the hemovores approach, he very slowly sort of goes inwards and crouches down. And then the hemovores, they don't really do anything. They just sort of crowd around him. Yeah. And there's another scene as well where, the two girls, why don't you come into the water?
You want to come into the water. Yeah.
The two Cockney who were on there from because they've been evacuated due to the war. There's a bit after they become, what they call them vampires, I guess. They go back to the house. I think, is it Miss Hardacre? Is that her name?
Yeah.
And they're obviously about to kill her. But what happens is it's the same thing where they sort of advance towards her. She sort of cowers down. And then the camera just stays on them a bit too long because they just don't do anything. They just pause. And then I think what's meant to happen is your mind is meant to sort of progress that scene and like, right, she's just been torn to shreds or, a throat slit, whatever. So I think with some scenes like that, I think the director, Nicholas Mallet, could have given them a bit more of just a bit more oomph and a bit more action there. Not to show anything graphic, but just to show that, like, right, once that scene had stopped and we're on to the next one, it's pretty clear to the viewer that person's mincemeat. Because at that point it just felt like, oh, they've probably just walked away. nothing happened. So although the direction is very good overall for the story over 4 parts, I feel like there are certain little bits where it was just a bit lackluster with those things. And also the biggest, it's not a deal breaker, but the biggest sort of thing for me is the guy that was in a guy called Raymond Trickett, who was in the Ancient One suit. I don't know if he just chose not to follow direction or if the direction was to I don't know. He's incredibly static. Now, I don't know if that's because of the suit. I don't think it is. The suit just looked like a pilot suit that had just stuff glued on it. It didn't look like it sort of prohibited his movement too much. Maybe the headpiece, I'm not too sure. But like, especially that scene where, between the Dr. Ace and Fenric towards the end, before the Ancient One sort of takes Sorin into the chamber and kills them both. There's a bit where the camera keeps cutting back to the Ancient One and he's just stood there staring at him motionless. And there's the other bit as well, when they very first discover him down in the crypt, he's just not doing anything. He's just sort of he's just standing completely still. So he's meant to be this like really scary, head hemovore. He's like the dude that you run away from. He's the scary one. He's like Dracula of the story, supposed to be. And whenever the camera's on him, the actor's not even blinking in that head suit. He's just standing there staring, motionless, straightforward. So for me, that's a huge missed opportunity in the story. The Ancient One could have been this big, evil creature that everyone's, beep scared of, and turns out to be just this kind of cute looking little, you know what I mean by that. So, yeah,
he is very he's a bit too cute. He looks sad, doesn't he? I just want to give him a hug.
Yeah.
He doesn't look that scary. Yeah, he looks a little bit sad.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the Ancient One, but I know exactly what you mean.
He looks bored
I said
as well.
to my friends when we were watching it, I just want to give him a hug. He just looks like he needs a hug, because he does. He's sort of sad and he mopes around. And even when he's pushing the guy in the gas chamber, he's like just sort of lumbering towards him. But yeah, I totally get what you mean, Matt. I mean, the action scenes. Yeah, I don't know if it's we're kind of used to those sort of shots in Doctor Who. I don't know if it's because the majority of the episode looks so good for Doctor Who at this time that those scenes stand out as being worse, because we get quite a lot of those sort of shots in Doctor Who over the years, don't we? But I think it's just because the rest of it looks so good, mate, that those scenes, they do stand out a bit. And also, you know, I think that's down to the editing as well. When they do go towards Miss Hardacre to kill her, yeah, you can almost hear the director going, right, cut, because it's just sort of 3 or 4 frames too long, isn't it? They just sort of stop. So I think the editing as well has a bit to play for in that. I think one of the scenes I was thinking of as well, though, when you said about the action not quite working, is the stuff in when they have the big fight break out in the church and they're bursting through the walls, and it's all good stuff, but there's bits like where McCoy's hitting it with like this plastic jug, and I don't know, Ace is sort of being grabbed, but she could obviously quite easily get away, but she's pretending she's stuck there. I mean, that's just classic Doctor Who, but again, I think because the rest of the story is so good, it does look a bit laughable. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's just a bit
Benny Hill music.
That's the sort of thing, yeah, you could easily make a meme out of it, like, you know, Nicholas Parsons sort of shutting the door on the hands, and it's you know, it's a shame actually, because if you were sort of showing it to sort of like just so, you know, if your sort of mum had walked in and said, oh, you're watching Doctor Who, that'd be exactly the sort of naff side of Doctor Who that they associate with the show. You know, it's, oh dear, this looks bad.
Yeah, totally.
But as fans, we sort of forgive it, I guess. So yeah, there are a couple of bits like that. I mean, you're right, we're gushing over it as a story, but it like anything, it's not perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, nothing's perfect, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to be critical of that stuff just because this is classic Doctor Who, and that's part of the charm, right? Some of the cheap sets and, you know, all that stuff. It's just part of the charm. But yeah, there are a couple of bits that I was pulled out of the story a little bit because I thought, oh come on, that could have been. But then I guess, you know, they're up against it, I suppose. Time-wise, budget-wise, and all that stuff. You can't afford to just keep resetting scenes and doing it all again and all like that. Just like the logistics, of making a TV show when you're on location. Like when you have the 2 girls that are coming out of the water and their hair's all soaking wet, they've got the makeup on. If something goes wrong with that, that's a long time to reset because you've got to dry the clothes, you've got to dry the hair, you know, you've got to go back to the bit before and all that stuff. So, you know, it's difficult. It's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, it could have been better by doing this and all that lot. But it's very difficult to make even nowadays, it's incredibly hard to just get a TV show off the ground and make it and produce it and stuff. So back in the day when you had next to no money and you're trying to do all this stuff, it's difficult. But yeah, it just pulls you out of the immersion a little bit with those things. But
yeah, a lot of it's their time thing, isn't it? They just had to get it done.
Yes,
you know, get it in the can. You know, and I guess they didn't know these were going to be at that back in the day. They didn't know these were going to be in like high definition Blu-ray sets that people would, you know, analyze to death. They didn't know that, did they? They thought people were just going to watch it, and they probably thought the BBC would wipe it at some point, you know, and reuse the film. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah. What did you think to the combination of different themes that sort of mashed together to make the story? So we've obviously got the curse side of things, like this old Viking Norse curse thing that they're trying to decipher, which is obviously leads to Fenric coming back, and the title sake of the story, the curse of Fenric and all that stuff. But then you also have this World War II setting, which is very a real visual thing, you know, when they go into Commander Millington's office, and it's a perfect recreation of Hitler's war room all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's very visual. And then as a side note, you've also got that also includes like the Ultima Machine, which is kind of based on sort of historical thing with like the code breakers, you know, from the war and all that stuff. But then as a little side note, you've got this thing happening with Ace and her supposed backstory with her mum and all that stuff. So I guess that plays a little bit into potentially not great for newcomers. But what did you think to the sort of combination of these things that make up the story?
I love the themes that are explored in this, and what I love is how they all interlink and work together. I particularly like the "how strong is your faith" thing. The fact that they can't kill the vicar because he believes. So but then because of the war and what's happening, and he's saying, I can't decide if we're doing the right thing because although we're fighting to defend our country, we are killing people, which is wrong. And so his faith, because of the war, is diminished, and therefore it breaks down the barrier so they can kill him. I think it's fascinating subject. The fact that it really, because it makes you think. It's really testing your faith, not just in God in terms of the vicar. It's testing your faith in humanity and what they're doing, and the right and wrong of going to war, and thinking we're right, but actually we're killing people just the same as they're killing people. It's a real can of worms that actually really makes you think. And I think to sort of interweave that into a story about killing vampire girls, it's just brilliantly utilised, all the themes in this, and it ties in with Ace's mum as well, all that stuff with she hates her mum because she gave her up. I think, did she give her up? Yeah, she hates her mum though, doesn't she? And then when she finds out the baby is her mum, the conflicting emotions that she feels over this baby that she's loved because it's a little cute baby, and it's but then she realizes this is her mum and she's going to hate that baby in a few years' time. It again, just so many good themes, mate, but they all have a payoff and they all work in terms of building up the story. They're not just, and I'm trying really hard not to compare this to the new series and bash the new series, but we've just seen a final where the themes were just complete, the threads were complete, doppelganger. They didn't make sense, half of them, and they didn't actually add anything to the story. And I think that the final with Shooty is a good example of how to get it wrong. I think this is a good example of a story where you've got threads and themes and plot points that absolutely come together. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the end bit where the Doctor has to make Ace lose her faith in him. It all works so incredibly well when you think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some really big themes that come together, sort of that culminate in the story. That the biggest thing probably is the whole faith thing, because they do it with the Reverend as well. So with Reverend Wainwright, he's obviously lost his faith a little bit, So yeah, and that's sort of the crux of how he dies, really, because he sort of comes back, doesn't he, and tries to convince himself that he hasn't lost his faith, and he holds up I think it's a Bible, obviously, and repels them for a bit, but then he sort of succumbs to they sort of say to him, don't they, you haven't got any faith, blah blah blah, and they and they end up killing him. And it's also what nearly happens with Ace as well towards the end. So there's this whole having faith in things and in people is a big one, and then it's sort of wrapped up in these sort of larger themes about the war and this Viking curse and stuff. So it's really cool, dude. Like thematically, it's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I said it's a mature story, I'm thinking of that scene. When they actually make the vicar lose his faith. I think there's a line in there about dropping bombs on German babies or something. It's a very mature script underneath all of this stuff going on, because that's what ultimately makes him lose his faith, and so they can kill him. It's like, how can you believe in something like that? And it's like, it really makes you think. It's like, it's pretty strong stuff underneath it all, actually, to be fair.
It's cool. And it's just quickly before characters, it's one of those kind of TARDIS-free, science fiction-y, usual Doctor Who stuff free story, right? We don't spend any time in the TARDIS console. There's no sonic screwdrivers knocking around. There's none of that. It's literally just down. I think the most we see is the Doctor putting up his umbrella, his question mark umbrella, when it starts raining. But
he really needs it in this story,
it's really
doesn't he?
a pure it's a really a pure character-driven story, which is cool.
Yeah, I love his coat as well. I know that was, I have a feeling that was Sylv's own coat because the weather was so bad when they were filming this that, as I said, it needed his umbrella for sure. But I think the big duffel coat he wears was his because it was so cold, and it really suits him, doesn't it? It's a real, obviously it's only in this story and probably because of that, but really it's a very doctorish coat, isn't it? Yeah,
Very,
I mean, Shooty
yeah.
wore something similar in 73 yards, didn't he? Like a different colour, but yeah, I love that big duffel coat he wears in this.
Yeah, it's very. Oh, it's a really nice coat actually. It's actually a really nice coat. Okay, let's talk about some characters, dude. What about Jean and Phyllis then? So, Joanne Kenny as Jean, Joanne Bell as Phyllis. The two teenagers that have been evacuated. They're bored out of their minds because they're down on the coast, nothing to do, and they end up staying with the very bossy, prim and proper Miss Hardacre. So those two, they were okay. They've got they had the kind of sinister hemovore thing down. When they come out of the water and stuff with the long fingernails and the makeup, they kind of look pretty cool, obviously of its time, but they were okay. I just think that maybe the lines that they were given were a little bit basic, because once they become hemovores, it's all very much like, we are going to take you over. Why don't you come into the water? All that stuff. It becomes a little bit sort of simplistic for them script-wise, but ultimately, not too bad. Pretty much as you'd imagine those to be from script to screen.
I know what girls go to Maiden Point for.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to lie. They're not the best actors, okay? But they do... I can see that they're taking it seriously, right? So they may not be giving award-winning performances, but I can see that they are trying. You know what I mean? I feel like they are trying their best. And they're taking it seriously. That's all I can ask for. They don't take me out the story or anything like that. And I think the fact that they've been told to talk like this is a little bit distracting because it probably hindered their performance slightly. But they're fine, mate. That's what I mean. They're absolutely fine. But they are into the story, so I can't say any more than that. And they had some fun moments. That scene where they come into the water. And then we get almost like a Sea Devils homage, don't we? When the hemovores will come out of the water. That reminds me of the Sea Devils coming out the sea. I don't know if that's intentional, that bit. But I'm jumping ahead anyway. But those two girls, they're absolutely fine. And I do like this sort of relationship with Miss Hardacre because, calling her an old battle axe and all this sort of thing. It's, I don't know, you get the characters straight away, don't you? The three of them, you just totally get the sort of dynamic between them, that they're just the two naughty schoolgirls and Miss Hardacre's like this old battle axe, trying to ruin their fun.
Yeah, they're not the great. I mean, they did go on to have a couple of parts in various things in the UK. Nothing crazy. No, I think they went on to be in like Grange Hill, EastEnders.
Oh, okay.
I think one of them was in The Bill, Bergerac. Just some sort of old school sort of 80s and 90s TV stuff, yeah. But in terms of this story, like you said, they weren't the greatest of actors, but we've seen worse.
We've definitely seen worse.
Yes, and then Janet Henfrey as Miss Hardacre, she was absolutely playing it as written, dude. I'm pretty sure when the script was given, they're like, wait, we need this real grumpy old, no nonsense, no patience woman who's... This has been forced upon her to take in these evacuees, and she's not bloody happy about anything. Because there's a scene as well where she's having a good old whinge to Reverend Wainwright about something outside the church, and was that her? I think he shuts her down, and she walks off with a hump.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's absolutely playing this as written, dude, and yeah, as expected again.
Great casting. She's got that look as well. It's not just the way she acts it. She's got that look about her that she is just superb casting. She absolutely fits that role, doesn't she? Is she, am I right in saying, was she the woman who gets killed at the start of the Capaldi episode, Mummy on the Orient Express? Was that her? Or am I getting mixed up? I'm sure she's the woman right at the start that's on the train that the mummy kills right at the start of that episode. I'm just having a look.
Yeah, you probably.
I'm just thinking she looks.
Remember.
No offense, she looks quite old in this. I'm thinking, was she still around?
She
then?
did.
Yeah, it was her.
It
was her, mate. Yeah, it's her.
Mrs.
So she's
Pitts,
in.
was it?
Yeah,
I'm sure that was her name in it. Yeah. Yeah, she was, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's her. So she pops up again, which is a good story. Actually, I haven't watched that one for a while. But yeah, so yeah, but yeah, she's great in it, mate. You absolutely get her character from the word go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's very cool. Yeah. Okie dokie. And then what about Nicholas Parsons then? A very well-known, established actor already at this point. And then has obviously gone on to do... he's probably the most famous person aside from McCoy, right? In this, I would say, at the time.
Yeah, at the time.
And as Reverend Wainwright, just a very, very cool cat. I really warmed to him, you know. This is a bit of a pigeonhole thing to say, but normally when in real life, whenever you have to go to church or anything and you meet vicars or reverends, whatever, they've normally got this kind of warming, and I say normally, not every time, but they've normally got this very passive, warming, sort of calming vibe about them. And he was, I don't know if that was intentional just because of Nicholas Parsons, but you could imagine him being, at the time at least, a real life vicar. To me anyway. He just, regardless of the lines he was given or anything like that, just the way he's playing the character on screen is so... Yeah, just so well done in terms of, you take all the other story elements out of it and it's just him playing a vicar. Just perfect casting for that. And he's really good in it. He's got this real... One of those actors that plays a lot in his face as well as his words. You know, when he's real turmoil inside about his faith and stuff and some of the fear that he has around this curse that's supposedly coming and stuff. Just very cool, dude. He was very, very good in this.
I think he's surprisingly good, mate, because I think Nicholas Parsons, I mean, someone out there might want to correct me, but I think he was mainly known for doing quiz shows, like Just a Minute and stuff like that. He did pop up in comedy sketch shows, quite often playing, for whatever reason, a vicar, so would sort of ham it up and be all comedic. So in this, to see him playing the part so straight, you know, so calm, so thoughtful, you really feel all the anguish that's going on inside his head about, you know, his faith in God. And there are some lovely scenes, you know, there's that one where he's just sat at the back of the church and I think Ace goes up to him and just sits and starts chatting with him, and he really tones his performance down to, you know, to again, you just feel like he's taking this show really seriously. It would have been very easy for him to ham up this performance and be like he is in everything else, you know, this sort of comedy style vicar or, you know, whatever. He's absolutely playing the part straight, and I love it. I just think he's, you know, he's really sort of got the brief of what this character's about. Yes. And I think he's great in it. I really do. That's it, mate. Yeah, he got the memo. He got the memo, So, yeah, it's very cool. I really like him in it. Yeah. Yes. And I feel sorry for him. You know, when he's laid down in the mud, I always feel, God, poor old Nicholas Parsons getting down there in that blimmin' muddy... I'm sure they had a mat there, but even so, it's absolutely pouring with rain. And that floor is just pure mush of mud, isn't it? And he's there on the floor, mat or no mat. You know, good on him for really getting into it. And do you know what? There's quite a few muddy scenes in this as well. It rained a lot, so there's quite a few scenes where they're just walking from building to building or something, and it's just sodden. It's just mud, mud everywhere. So, poor Nicholas Parsons just laid up in the wet mud. And then we have a bunch of soldiers in the story, so both Russian, British soldiers and stuff. I won't go into them individually, but nothing to sort of shout home about. Just doing their thing, really. There was one soldier that was in a previous episode of Doctor Who. One of the Russian soldiers, a guy called Vershinin. He played the destroyer in Battlefield. Oh, didn't know that. Yeah, so a guy called Marek Anton. Yeah, so he was little sort of casting trivia, I guess. But the rest of the soldiers just normal
one line here or there.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy. So we did have a guy called Captain Sorin, though, played by Tomek Bork. I think his real name's Tomasz Borkowaj, a Polish actor. So he was the guy that obviously embodied Fenric at the end. And it was the guy that had a bit of a... You got the feeling that him and Ace might have had a little candlelight dinner somewhere if this had panned out differently. So they had got on very well, and then unfortunately meets his demise as the Ancient One shoves him into the chamber at the end and kills him. But he had a few good scenes, that guy, though, and played sort of a nice, smiley, helpful soldier. He rescues Ace, doesn't he, from the church roof?
That's it.
And then before that, has a fairly good head on his shoulders. Some of the Russian soldiers were egging him on to do other things, and he was a bit more cool. He was like, nope, we'll see how this plays out and all the rest of it. And then the switch at the end when he becomes, when he gets possessed by Fenric, he's got that evil smile and in the way he carries himself. So, not a bad performance from him. Not too bad.
No, it's pretty good. Again, when he's possessed, he actually looks quite scary in a way, doesn't he? He's got a certain look about him as well. But he was good. I liked him.
He was good. Yes. And then we had a few more sort of British soldiers and so on. And we had I can't see her name. Where's her name on here? What the woman that was Dr. Judson's sort of assistant, sort of wheeled him around everywhere. She popped up in Who again in Martha Jones' first story.
Yeah. What's her name? She's quite famous. Yeah, I do. Yeah, she's Anne Reid, Nurse Crane.
Anne Reid, of course, yeah.
Yeah, she's been in a few things, hasn't she?
She had a really small part in this, dude. Because, she was known for a few things at this point. She was in Coronation Street, which is a soap here in the UK. She was in that for quite a long time, and she's done loads of TV work.
She's done loads.
A few good scenes from her. Yeah, a few good scenes from her where she snaps, she's basically annoyed at having to look after Dr. Judson, basically. And, annoyed of, all of his rubbish about Viking runes and all that stuff. She's just there to get him from A to B and doesn't want any of his nonsense, basically. But she was okay. She comes back as the villain, doesn't she? In fact, she comes back as a Hemivore-style blood-drinking villain alien in Martha Jones's first story. When the hospital goes to the moon with the Jadoon and so on. Smith and Jones, yeah. So she pops back in Who, but she was okay. Just didn't see much of her.
No, she's done loads of TV work over the years. She's a small part in this, but I do still feel sorry for her when she gets killed. Like when Dr. Judson turns on her, and I feel like, well, she has looked after you, and because he says something horrible, doesn't he? You've driven me mad all these years or something. So I did feel a bit sorry for her when she got bumped off, to be honest. Yeah,
she does get bumped. Ultimately. Okay, so what about Commander Millington then? Played by Alfred Lynch. He's the commander in charge of this base, and has got his own motives for doing things, right? He's not there anymore to do pretty much nothing to do with the war, really. He's kind of forgotten about that, and his interest now is Fenric, in bringing the power of... He wants to control the power of Fenric, essentially. And, so he encourages or, prods Dr. Judson to do this. And his other motive is to sort of booby-trap the Ultima machine, right? So he says in the story that he's going to allow the Russians to capture it, and then when they take it back to Moscow, it's going to be when they decode one of the words, it's going to detonate and do all that stuff. So he's kind of lost the plot a little bit. It's no longer about, the fight against the Germans or the Nazis, and all that stuff. It's more about his own means now and that sort of thing. So he had some great scenes though, dude. Plays that kind of stiff upper lip, hard as nails, not taking any mess in commander, sort of British military type really well. So and he never smiles. Not once in this whole thing does his character. He doesn't break into anything other than sort of stern, shouty, let's get stuff done. So he was on it, the whole thing, the entire 4 parts. He was absolutely on it as that kind of, no nonsense British military type. But he was good though. He was really good.
Yeah, and a great tash, a great little pencil tash that he's got on. No, I liked him as well. Sorry, what were you saying about the tash?
Yeah, I was going to say about the tash. Yeah, sorry, I coughed then. Fantastic. Yeah, as you'd expect at the time, I suppose.
You're too late, Doctor. He said he looks like he's having a lot of fun, doesn't he, with his lines? But yeah, I thought he was good in it, and he's got a lot of character in his face, hasn't he? You know, he's one of those actors that's, I don't know, he's got a look that you kind of buy into. Yeah, I thought he was pretty good.
He was good. Very cool. And then the last sort of supporting cast actor would be Dinsdale Landon as Dr. Judson. So we have these kind of scientist, historians, whatever you want to call them, a lot in Doctor Who, especially Classic Who, right? There's often, whenever the Doctor lands and is in a situation, typically you've got either some kind of military-based problem or you've got, a scientific or history-based problem. So there's normally a bunch of soldiers and then there's a doctor or a scientist of some sort that he connects with. And so that's no different for this story. So Dr. Judson is the guy that's so eager to decipher all of the runes and everything that's down in the crypt. He's trying to do that. He's obviously getting nudged by Commander Milliting to do it, but he's got this real fascination with it, alongside the traditional things of the time, like, logic diagrams and doing all that stuff, because it's ultimately all part of his process to build this Ultima machine and all that stuff. So again, a little bit like Tomek Bork, who played Captain Sorin, a really cool character. Although he snaps a little bit of here and there, he's a kind of a likable character to a degree. But then as soon as he gets possessed by Fenric, he doesn't need the wheelchair anymore. He stands up. And then there's that really cool scene where we find out that the Doctor has met Fenric before. He drops the bombshell that, we meet again, or we do this sort of thing again, Doctor, which is really cool. And another good actor that's playing one role really well, but then manages to flip the switch really well and play a completely different character in the same story. So he was cool.
He's good. I think he's great casting. The name rings a bell. I feel like he's another one that's probably done a lot of work over the years. But yeah, he's brilliant as Dr. Judson, and I love that scene, mate. As soon as you said his name, I thought of that bit where he sort of rises up behind McCoy, doesn't he? And he says something like, "We play the game again, Time Lord." Yeah, brilliant stuff. But yeah,
he's based on the chess game from.
That's it. Yeah.
From something Silver. No, it's based on a chess game from before.
It's Silver
right?
Nemesis, isn't it?
So I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, he's great as the cantankerous Dr. Judson, who's sort of like, miserable old so and so. But then, to turn like he does when he gets shot across the room, and he's brilliant at it. I think he's great.
He's very cool. Yeah. Okay, we spoke about these guys already, but just to sort of wrap up with these two. So Sophie Aldred, then one of her best performances for me in Classic Who. She's really. There are a couple of scenes where she does have that playful side to her that's very cool about Ace as a character. When she finally gets to use some, what's her explosive called?
Nitro 9.
Nitro 9. She finally gets to use a bit of it. And then you see the explosion. She's got that massive grin on her face and she's like, wicked.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So we have those little playful moments that are very cool about Ace. But more than anything, she's got a real maturity in this story. You can tell that she's come a long way from, what's her first story with the Doctor? Dragonfly?
Dragonfly, that's Faulty Towers. Dragonfly.
Yeah. Dragonfire. From that moment when she, first teams up with the Doctor through to now, she's come on a long way.
Yes.
And it's very evident in this story. Just how mature she is. The scenes that we mentioned earlier, all that stuff. So Sophie Aldred, mate, she's absolutely brilliant in this story. so good to watch.
It's great, isn't it? And it picks up from, themes like that. There is a bit of an arc for Ace, being going up through the time window, whatever it was, and then, obviously Ghost Light, going back to the house and being abandoned. And even though I've seen this many times, it does tug at my heartstrings when she finds out the baby's her mum, because it's all in her facial expressions of she can't quite comprehend it. That this baby is going to be her mum, someone she's grown up hating, and it's all there on the page, and she delivers it brilliantly. And hats off to her for jumping into that water at the end, because man, I bet that was freezing. Every time she gets up on the cliff, on the rock to jump in, I start to shiver just thinking about it. So she really goes for it, this mate. And considering she hadn't done much, if any, TV work when she joined the show with in Dragonfire, I think she'd maybe done some children's TV presenting or something, but she wasn't sort of particularly well known as an actor. But she's really comes on leaps and bounds. Like you said, not that she's bad in Dragonfire, but if you look at how she progresses over the story, and actually, a bit like I was saying about McCoy, immerses herself into the character of Ace. Wow, superb. And this is such a good story for her. Writer Ian Briggs, I don't know if did he create the character? I'm not sure. Got a feeling in the back of my mind he might have created Ace, but he really gives her a great story here, really does, and ties up lots of nice little threads to do with Ace as well.
Yeah, she's very cool, and that scene at the end, it's kind of a nice sort of reset for her mentally as well. That was the whole point of that, diving into the water, because she, I think she says to the doctor, "I'm not frightened," or something, or the doctor puts his hand on her arm and says, "Don't be frightened of the water anymore."
Yeah.
And she sort of takes that leap, and then she comes out and she feels refreshed and stuff. And but yeah, you're right. And also that that would have been fairly scary to do as well, because they probably would, well, I say probably, they definitely would have scoped out that area around the rocks and stuff to make sure it would have been safe for anybody to dive in and stuff. But that's still a bit of a scary little dive there. That's all sort of...
Don't think they'd do it now, would they, mate? It'd be probably green screened or something. They wouldn't, like, health and safety would never allow that now. Not in a million years.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hats off to Sophie Eldred on this one. She had to really dig deep, both physically to do some of the things in the story, and then, emotionally in the character as well. So yeah, what a belter for Ace and Sophie Eldred on this one. And then lastly, obviously, Mr. McCoy, who is just so... I'm not going to go into it too much. We've spoken about some of the scenes that he's excelled in and this story and stuff, but just his Doctor, mate, at this point in his era, ultimately and very sadly at the end, but just so amazing and electrifying to watch. Like, every scene where just his... Like the famous scene that we talked about, where at the end where he tells Fenric to kill her, and he goes into that dark place, and he's doing it just because he wants to break the faith in her so that the curse is broken. And you can see afterwards why he's done it, but at the time, like, just the look on his face, just brilliantly played. And it's that this story for me is very much about a story of switching up characters. If you think about, as this story progresses from start to finish, you have people who physically change, like Jean and Phyllis, who physically change into hemovores. You've got, and also Dr. Judson, who changes from, the crippled doctor into, the dude that walks around after he's been possessed. Captain Sorin, who's got a mission to do with the war, but then turns out that, that's not important anymore. So he changes from that, teams up with the British soldiers, and they go to take somebody out. You've got Ace's change from realizing this fear or hatred for her mum that then resets in the end for the love for the baby that ultimately grows up to be her mum, and so on. And then you have the Doctor that changes momentarily a couple of times from being the Doctor that we know, McCoy's Doctor, to this very dark. Even his voice changes. You know, his voice goes down a register a little bit, and he's got that darkness to it. And so, yeah, for me, the story is about characters changing, but no more so than that scene with the Doctor when, you know, when he tells the Ancient One to kill her via Fenric. You know, it's just things like that. I'm just looking at it, I'm thinking, F me. Like when the story's finished and, you know, oh man, he's just brilliant, dude. I can't gush anymore because we need to wrap this up, but he's just so good, mate. I absolutely love him as the Doctor in this story. Yeah.
It's peak McCoy, isn't it? It's absolutely Sylvester at the top of his game as the Seventh Doctor. I still get a bit of a sort of shiver down my spine at that scene because it's just that he has to be so harsh to Ace. You know, he calls her a social misfit, I think, or something like that. You know, he has to absolutely destroy her faith in him. And she's heartbroken when they come out. Like, even though I think she kind of has worked out what's happened, but, you know, she's still like, I can't believe you said that. And he's, you know, trying to explain to her, I had to do it. But I do remember when I watched this for the first time being a bit jaw on the floor of what's going on. Like, what's happened to the Doctor? Is he possessed? Like, you know, because as I said, as a kid, I was sort of trying to wrap my head around this story. I hadn't really sort of got the themes of it back then. And I do remember thinking, what's going on with the Doctor? Like, this is horrible. But it is so good. It is such a good scene and a brilliant way to have a brilliant ending to the story that, as I said, brings in all the themes of faith and breaking down the barriers and all this sort of stuff. Like you said, I could gush for a very long time over McCoy in this story. I think he's at the top of his game, but I won't waffle on anymore. I'll just say he's brilliant in it. Absolutely brilliant.
Yes, he is brilliant. And just lastly, I want to mention the music as well. So this is a Mark Ayres score, and it's really, really cool in a way that doesn't rely too much on sort of the 80s, you know, late 80s experimental synth stuff like that. It's got a real kind of feel to it. You know, it's got the suspenseful side of it, the mystery, you know, not so much a horror soundtrack, but it's got that side of it, but also some real uplifting bits as well. So it's got a real good range to it. So a great soundtrack. I often listen to this quite a lot when I'm working and so on. It's very cool.
Yeah, it really suits the story, actually, because it's an unusual soundtrack, but I mean that in a good way. It really, really complements the scenes, and I can hear it in my head, you know, as soon as you mention Curse of Fenric, you know, you don't even have to talk about the music. It instantly sort of starts playing in my head. There's like certain little themes that I can just hear as crystal clear just by mentioning the title of the story. But yeah, it's good. I was going to say, I think at times perhaps maybe there's just a tad too much of it. And you know, there are bits where it's really going full on, like dun dun dun. You get lots of orchestra hits, but no, it does. It really suits the story, and I think Marquez did a great job with this. It has its own feel to it. I mean, it's totally different, for example, to the music he did for. I think he did Greatest Show. Pretty sure he did Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Totally different. You know what I mean? So it's very good. I like the music in it.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And just very, very quickly, last thing, although they didn't have too much money and budget for this, by God, did they love an explosion in McCoy's era. They love to blow everything up, you know, people diving. Like I think most of the time in a McCoy story, there's a scene with either him or Ace or both of them diving to the floor during an explosion of some sort. So yeah, it's very cool. Anything else on your notes, dude?
No, I don't think so, mate. I think we've covered it quite well, actually. Yeah.
Gone through it all. Cool. Right. Yeah. Scores on the doors. I think it's your turn to go first, bud.
It is. I'm struggling a bit because I've written 8.5, but I'm wondering if it's a 9. It's just so good. I'm wondering what I'm knocking off a 1.5 for. Probably production. I mean, like you said, it's not perfect. Oh, actually, I'm going to ask you to go first because I'm between 8.5 and a 9. What are you giving it?
Okay, so I'm giving this a 9.
Well, then I will follow you. I will follow you and give it a 9. I was thinking as I was looking at my page, I think I was going to up this to a 9 because it is good. So yeah, let's give it a 9.
Yes, a 9 apiece. It's just a great watch, dude. The only thing that I've knocked a point off for is some of the bits I mentioned earlier, with the Hemivore mask and the Ancient One mask and some of the direction. And also just because, well, it's not really a thing that you can be too critical about, but it's not great for the casual or newcomer. Yeah. That's the only thing. So you do have to watch some other McCoy stuff in the run up to it, I guess. I guess. But other than that, it's an absolutely belter of a story, dude. A real good classic.
Yeah, let's give it
so a 9 apiece. Right. Some reviews. So we actually were going to review this story, weren't we, a couple of months ago, but then we ran out of time because we reviewed something else, and then Shooties season 1 started, so we were doing that. So I actually asked you lot for your thoughts and everything. So I've got all that saved, plus a couple that you sent in over the last couple of days. So first of all, over on the old Twitter, a couple of new ones that came in. The first one was this interesting tweet from a guy called Darren Williams. And he said, hi guys, really like your podcast. Big fan of Classic Who. My uncle was in Frontier in Space with the third Doctor playing Stuart. And his partner, also part of the family, was in The Curse of Fenric playing Commander Millington.
Oh, really?
Keep up the good work. Yeah. So, Darren, thank you very much, first of all, for listening to the podcast. That's very cool. And what a very cool thing to be associated with. His uncle's partner was Commander Millington. And,
I'm glad we were complimentary about him. Imagine if we'd have said, there's one actor in this that really let the side down. So, when I was doing some research into the story and the characters and stuff, which I always try to do before we review stuff. Alfred Lynch, his life partner was Stuart. So yeah, it's very, very cool for that association. So thanks for letting us know. That must be really cool to know that someone and family members was in Doctor Who and all that stuff. So very cool indeed. Thank you very much. Some newer reviews that also came in on the Twitter was Chippy T, which I think also reviewed before, but said great mix of ancient evil, old and modern day enemies and striking settings, very strong performances from Ace and the Doctor, and a story with a cracking pace, a strong 8. It's crazy how time alters your perception, because if I go back to your review of Chippy T from before, back in May, you said everybody loves this, but it's too convoluted for me. Time streams and stories jump backwards and forwards. We've got Hemivores, vampires, Germans, mythology, the Doctor's betrayal of Ace and her future. Good, but not great, a 6. So, there you go.
Yeah, maybe you've rewatched it in the meantime or something. But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How just, a couple of months gone by and your perception changes. Moving on to Lee Cowden says, when I first saw this at the age of 10, I had finally warmed somewhat to the 7th Doctor. Now I think the season is a wonder, probably helped by the nostalgia of just how 1989 production feels. This is as good as late period Classic Who gets, cut off in its prime. A 9 out of 10. Very true. Very true. And John Winston says, easily one of the best stories in the original run. The McCoy era didn't start well, but it went on to an amazing high. Great story, brilliant score, and tremendous cliffhangers. Even Nicholas Parsons puts in a superb performance. A very rare but well-deserved 10 out of 10. From John. Very cool. And then just to go back to some of the saved reviews that you guys sent in before, Vince Bishop just says short and sweet, excellent. Jordan Shortman, one of our writers, said, absolutely adore this story. Doesn't matter which of the 3 versions I watch, I never get bored. The Doctor and Ace are excellent. as are the rest of the cast. The Hemivores are genuinely unnerving creations. I can't visit Lulworth Cove without wondering what's under the water. Edward Gillooly says, an absolute classic and my fave McCoy story. The mix of vampires, Vikings and World War II works really well. All the performances are great. A 9 out of 10. Everett Stevens, this was peak classic Who. Intelligent storytelling that didn't spoon feed its audience. Sylv and Soph at the top of their game. Great production values. My favourite of all time. 10 out of 10.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, Nick H goes all out to be a classic and very nearly gets there. A couple of cringe scenes with Ace knock 1 or 2 points off. And the extended cut is so much better than the TV. A 9 out of 10. And that was it for Twitter. So some great scores there. And then over on the Facebook, we had Paul Graham says, makes you feel all tingly. Not sure what I like best. Ace's character development, the beauty of the cinematography, Nicholas Parsons, quality performances from all the players, the sinister tension that builds throughout, or the growing mystery of the Seventh Doctor. And just as you were proud to be a Doctor Who fan again, they pulled the rug from under our feet. Anyway, 9 intergalactic chess pieces out of 10.
Sweet.
Another 9. Very cool. Charlie Turner says, we play the contest again, Time Lord. What a line, dude.
Great.
It says, McCoy at his most darkest, other than the time that he used the hand of Omega to blow up Skaro in Remembrance. It's moments like that that make me truly afraid of the Doctor at certain times, and it's just that proves that he is not always sunshine and rainbows. Also, the best Ace story that there is. 10 out of 10 all day long.
Sweet.
Very cool. Who else was there? Jeff Waddle says, easily in my top 5 of all Who. Classic era does Moffat. Vampires, World War II, Russian invasion, Ancient Gods, timey-wimey shenanigans, manipulative Doctor. It's all here and it's magnificent. 10 out of 10.
Cool.
Douglas Stanford Grandy says, one of the only 3 McCoy stories I enjoy, and this is the best of them. This one should have been in the final episode of the season, which would have ended the series on a more positive note. Oh, sorry, the final one of this one instead of Survival. Incidentally, the other 2 McCoy stories that I enjoy are Remembrance and Time and the Rani. Yes, that's right. The rest are that bad. That Time and the Rani is one of the better ones. Anyway, I give this an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Darren Sykes, great story. Slightly edges out Remembrance as my favourite of the McCoy era. Superbly atmospheric, backed up by some fantastic location shooting that makes this a 9.5 out of me. Shame we couldn't get a season 27 with more stories like this.
Yeah.
Yes. And goes on to mention Miss Ardacre back in The Mummy on the Orient Express. Jonathan Tibbs, love it, the pain acted by Sophie Aldred at the end when the Doctor has to break her trust in him is heart-wrenching. I always just want to pick up Ace and give her a hug.
Yeah.
Don't we all, Jonathan? Yes. Sean Mundy, I enjoyed this one a lot. 7 and 8 are on top form. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. Mark Hugill looks good at times, but ends up being lots of running around amidst the confusing plot and awful incidental music. Oh no.
Really?
Watched it 3 times since its initial airing and have never liked it. Overrated. Sorry, folks, a 5 out of 10.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Cheers, Mark. And Andrew Stewart says, absolutely love this one. My fave Doctor and Sylv story. Sylv and Soph are great. Tense cliffhangers, and the supporting cast are all good. Are as good as Soph and Sylv as well. 8.5. And lastly, Alex Bobbins says, another farewell to the 7th Doctor. Say ain't so. Mr. McCoy was the Doctor when I first started watching Who as a kid, and I was mesmerised by the adventures of the Doctor and Ace. And then all too soon he was gone. Then bizarrely, he showed up in EastEnders before getting murdered in America. Another goodbye would come 26 years later in a volcano of all places. So farewell again to number 7 from the brilliant Big Blue podcast. Obviously, Curse of Fenric gets a 10 out of 10 for me.
Nice.
So I think Alex is referring to this being our last ever McCoy review, etc.
Yeah.
So, dude, this has got to be a 9 average. We got some 10s in there, but mostly 8s and 9s, so it's got to be a 9, I think.
Yeah, silly internet cut out during some of the readings of those comments, so I didn't hear all the scores, but I got the gist. And it sounded like most of them were pretty positive. And I heard a lot of 9s coming through there, so that's cool.
Yeah, very cool. So, in a bit of a sad moment, dude, it's time to say we're going to wrap here on the last ever McCoy story to review. It's I don't want to get too sentimental, but it's been just fantastic reviewing all of McCoy's era, and there's been some clangers in there, of course, but overall, when you watch stories like this, there's a very good reason why a lot of people either just love McCoy or they come round to his Doctor, the more they watch of his era and stuff. So we say goodbye to McCoy, but next week the reviews continue, dude. We are carrying forward, of course. So in the shadow of McCoy, what are we reviewing next week?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting one because we are now down. We have now got hardly any complete stories left to do. So we're going to have to start dipping into some of the animations, some of the incomplete stories. It's going to be an interesting few weeks. So next week, and I am looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this because I recently watched it and I'm looking forward to giving it another go to see what I actually think of this one. We are going to be reviewing the Celestial Toymaker, as in the newly released animated version. So we will also talk about the one episode that exists, but we're going to be diving into the 4 episodes that were animated recently and giving our opinion on the story, the animation and all that. So very much looking forward to seeing what you make of this one, mate. There's been a lot of chat about it. Let's see what you think of it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. The old Celestial Toymaker. It's so divisive, this one. So yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts as well. Because you and I haven't I don't think we've spoken about it at all.
No.
Since it was at the BFI, I think, wasn't it? And then released on DVD and Blu-ray. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one next week. And I think on that note, dude, let's wrap it there for this very long episode, and episode 404.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much for sticking with us through this over 2-hour episode. That was 404, and our review of the Curse of Fenric. And I think those scores were more than justified, dude. It's a belter of a story. So thank you for listening to our thoughts, and thank you so much to you lot for sending in your reviews and scores out of 10 for that as well. As Adam said, next week we are onto some animation, the recently released The Celestial Toymaker. So give that a watch if you can do. We'll be asking for your thoughts and reviews on that as always. In the meantime, make sure you are following or subscribing to the podcast in whatever app or wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you won't miss an episode when it goes out every Friday. Plus you won't miss the monthly roundtable episodes with the writing team as well. So lots of cool Doctor Who content on the old podcast stuff, so make sure you are following for all that stuff. You can also listen for free on the website if you like. That is bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk, and all the eps are on there, plus all the reviews and articles and everything from the writing team, so get stuck into all of that. We are on the socials too: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, links on the website. Get involved over there, plus dive into the free Discord server and chat Doctor Who with lots of other cool Doctor Who fans. And of course, don't forget to remember to check out Adam's channel on YouTube. It is, of course, The Geek's Handbag.
Geek's Handbag, yeah, lots of stuff on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. Also on all the socials, Facebook, not Twitter. What's it called? X. That's the one. Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, I still haven't got used to that. I don't think I'll ever call it X, to be honest.
Yeah. Go and check out Adam's stuff on all the things. And until next week, my name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And remember,
Bloody.